Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Well, actually, welcome to Spoiler Alert, Bookcast, and more. We are going to be.
Mute for Rose.
Oh,
there
hello!
Hello.
I was like doing an intro here. What's up?
I haven't done any intro. Hi, you guys. Welcome in, everybody. Do you want to do the intro? Go for it.
Okay, so welcome to Spoiler Alert, Bookcast, and more. Today we are going to be going over the first 3 chapters of Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This is, obviously most people are most familiar with the movie, but this book, the copyright is 1986, so it's a decently old book. But yeah, so we're going to AudioIgnis and I.
It doesn't seem that old.
Yeah, like I feel like this is one of those books that is kind of timeless, but it's because like a lot of people are familiar with the movie, and so it has this like more familiar sense to it. Versus
That's fair.
Some of the stuff my mom tells me about. She's like, "Yeah, I read this book when I was younger." I was like, "What? I've like never heard of like most of them." I'm like, that's okay. But I feel like any book that has a movie made of it is going to be, like, it's going to stick around a lot longer.
Yeah.
But...
And I'm going to be real with you. I haven't watched the movie. I've never read the book. I know that you're ahead of me on that, so all of this will be spoilers for me. Anything past what we've read.
Oh my gosh. How in the world have you not read that yet? Or or seen the movie at least. Like,
I don't know.
You love Studio Ghibli. How have you not?
It's just one that I haven't seen yet. Oh my gosh, reading the first 3 chapters, like, I wanted to keep reading so badly, because this is actually really good.
I will say, it is a lot different from the movie. Like, I think that's the thing with, like, anything. Also, potential future cover thing, or future episode idea, is, like, we read the book, and then we watch the movie, and then we discuss the differences.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm so glad you brought that up.
That would be so fun.
I thought it'd be great if we read a book and then just watch the movie for it, and comment on it.
Like, seriously, because there are already things in here that I'm like, okay, that's very different from the movie. I will keep that to myself, though.
You'll have to take the notes on that. I'm gonna have, like, notes after the fact kind of thing for that, because I don't know the movie.
Yeah, but, like, already there are things that are different. But should we start with chapter 1?
Before that, I just have to point out and agree with Con as well. The intro's awesome, isn't it? Rose did such an amazing job. You guys,
I had so much fun with that. I had so much fun.
She made amazing intros. She set up these, like, screens and everything. She did so good, you guys. It's awesome. I just had to...
I had a lot of fun doing those.
I loved it. I loved how it turned out.
Even if we had to move this stream back, a day, because we were trying to get things done.
Because we spent 3 hours trying to get it done, bro.
Yes, we did.
Okay, so did we want to start with summarizing, like, are we going to be talking about each chapter?
I think we should go chapter by chapter.
Okay.
Because there are things that...
My notes chapter by chapter. I should probably have done that.
Did you not?
I mean, I took notes, like, as I read each chapter, but they're just all in, like, a line.
Oh, no. See, so I'm a nerd. I have my notebook, and it's like, Howl's Moving Castle, chapter 1, and I'm like, setting, characters, character. Like,
oh, that's literally what I should have done.
I have, like, little notes on, like, what each section is, and it's like, okay, so this pertains to character, this pertains to setting, this pertains to this, and then it's like, chapter 2, all of my... I'm a nerd.
Oh man, your notes are gonna be so much better than mine. My notes are not that good.
It's okay. Let's see. So chapter 1. I love the chapter titles, by the way. Like,
oh my gosh, yes.
Books need to get back to chapter titles instead of just like chapter 1, chapter 2. This one is chapter 1, in which Sophie talks to hats. Like, that already sets the tone for the book. Like, okay, who's Sophie? Why is she talking to hats? Like, what's going on? Is it gonna make sense?
Sophie's crazy and I love her. Okay.
I oh my gosh, Sophie's the best. Okay, so starting off, I love that, like, the literally one of my first notes. Sentence 1 sets up a world of magic and foreshadows an important thing that will impact the story. So, sentence 1. In the land of Ingrini, there, where such things as 7-league boots and cloaks of invisibility exist, it is quite a misfortune to be born the eldest of 3. Like, that already has, like, foreshadowing written all over it.
Right? That was literally, it lays out, like, everything to come.
Yeah, it's like, this is where it happens, the land of Ingrini, or Ingary. So it's like, there it is, and then 7-league boots. It automatically makes you curious. You're like, what? Like,
Yeah,
what is a 7-league boot?
I'm like, do I just not know what this is, or is this just like...
Well, and the cloak of invisibility, it's like, huh. It's like, how, So you immediately know, like, this is not a normal world.
Yeah.
This is something else. And then, let's see. So, obviously, you know, it talks about being the eldest of 3. It's like, you know that's going to come into play. And just like 2 sentences down, Sophie Hatter was the eldest of 3 sisters. It's like, oh, okay. But I like, everyone knows you are the one who will fail first, even worst, if the 3 of you set to seek out your fortunes. A fortune comes up a lot in the first chapter.
All the time.
Like, it's definitely brought up multiple times, like, and this whole, like, first children are failures. I feel like that's kind of like, this book is for first children, here you go. Like, it definitely has that vibe of, oh, if you're a first child, like, it's okay, you're gonna fail anyway.
Okay, whenever I first read it, I was, like, wondering, right, for, like, at least the first chapter, I got the impression that it was, like, all of society was under this belief.
It's just, like, the unwritten rule.
Right? Yeah, it's just, like, the unwritten rule, but I don't know, as, like, I got into, like, the later, I'm gonna go a little bit ahead with it, as I got to the later chapters, I feel like this is more of just, like, her family thing, like her family like standard that she set for herself, and she's just like believing that for herself.
So I will get into that later, because there are several spots that I'm like, okay, here you can see like Sophie has sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy because of the way that she treats herself and the way that others treat her. She's like, oh, I'm the firstborn child. Like, yes, I'm going to take over the shop because that's what makes sense. You know, oh yeah, like it makes sense for me to take care of everyone.
Exactly. And it's just like, I feel like she's setting herself up to be like that, as opposed to it being like how it's laid out is like, oh yeah, all of society knows that, like, you know, misfortune is for the eldest of 3, like, daughters. Like, it's just always going to be for her. She's not going to find a fortune.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's just, like, even though this is, like, third person and everything, it's not, like, from her perspective. I feel like that is just her perspective being brought
I think it's
all of it. You know what I mean?
I would say it's more of third person limited. It's definitely not third person omniscient, because there are a lot of things that you don't get with the other characters. You get a little bit of insight here and there, but it's mostly limited to Sophie's, like, scope.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's definitely just following Sophie.
So...
And wait, for people who are watching and who don't know, the book is about the girl called Sophie, and for general idea of her, she has 3 sisters.
No, she has 2.
Sorry, 2 sisters. They're the 3 sisters together. She has 2 sisters, Martha and Letty, I think, right?
Yes.
And her mother passed away, and her father was a hatter, and he owned a hat business. And he married her stepmother. Her stepmother had Martha, I think. So
yes. So
Martha's her half sister. Letty's her full sister.
Yes.
And the book is just like starting there, where she is the eldest of these 3 sisters, talking about that. Just so you guys are
so the land is Ingery. The actual town is Market Chipping. And so I actually found it really interesting that in the beginning of the book, like literally page 2, it's set up to where, so Sophie was 2, Letty was 1 when their mom died, and the dad married his young shop assistant, Fanny, who gave birth to Martha. But it talks about how, like, this ought to have made Sophie and Letty into ugly sisters. So like the ugly stepsisters. So it sets up, they're like, it should have made them into that. But like it sets up this sort of like non-Cinderella background. Like the stepmom is portrayed as, like, Sophie sees her as actually being nice. She didn't treat them any differently. Like Sophie's very optimistic and actually very like kind towards her stepmother, and she loves her sisters. She adores them. I also found it weird. They named everyone except the dad. The dad never got a name. He's always referred to as Mr. Hatter.
Yeah.
And, like, then he dies, and it's just like, oh, poor Mr. Hatter died. I'm like, he didn't even have a name? Like, so you can tell the focus is not going to be on him or Sophie's relationship to him. Like,
you know, that's actually interesting that you point that out. Like, he's so unimportant they didn't give him a name.
They're just like, yeah.
Like, we don't even need to bother getting into this. Also, I had a question in chat.
Yes.
What is the genre of the book? And I actually don't know the specific genre.
I would say the genre is... It's meant for more, like, children-ish. It's like children's fantasy, but probably, like, not quite young adult, like, right below young adult. So it's not, like, super highbrow or anything. It's meant to be, like, a kid's entertaining, like, read nighttime story sort of thing. But it is very entertaining, and it's quite a thick book, actually. It is.
I would also consider it, like, I mean, just straight up from the first sentence again, I think it's going to be fantasy.
It is. I can guarantee.
So there's that.
So it's 429 pages. So it's she's not a thin book. She's a little girthy, but it's meant for young readers or people who like to be entertained.
Casual read. It's really good so far. I'm enjoying it.
Okay. Let's see. So yeah, he has no name. And then it's set up to where Sophie is, like, very studious because all the girls go to school. That was, a big point. All 3 daughters went to a really nice school, and Sophie is the most dedicated to her studies. She's the caretaker. She's, she's the responsible one. Letty is the second, and she's built up to be very pretty, and, like, that's kind of her personality. She's, she wants to marry into money, like... She's just, that's how she's set up in the first chapter is, oh, like, she's the beautiful sister, like, everyone loves her. Martha is, I actually didn't even have any notes on Martha for chapter 1, or at least not on this page.
Martha was just, like, I mean, I know that she was made out to be smart and, like, that kind of thing, right?
Oh, okay, so it's right here
she's
on...
She's gonna get her fortune.
Yes, that's because she's the youngest. Yeah. So, and Letty actually brings it up. She says, "It's not fair," Letty would shout. "Why should Martha have the best of it just because she was born the youngest? I shall marry a prince, so there." So, Martha's set up to be like, oh, she's gonna go seek her fortune. Like, this is what she's gonna do. She's the youngest.
It's like, just because she's the youngest, she's going to be super rich and famous and amazing, and, like, that's what they set her up for.
So, and it says, to which Martha always retorted that she would end up disgustingly rich without having to marry anybody. So, this will come up later. So, in chapter 1, they are set up to where Letty is pretty, she is going to get married, she's going to marry a prince, like, everything's going to be good. And Martha's like, no, I'm going to seek my fortune, I'm going to be rich, I don't need to marry anybody. So, she's got a little toot on her, but we like that.
And it's funny because, like, Sophie's personality doesn't come out a lot in the first chapter.
It does not.
She's very kind. She's very, like...
Passive.
Yeah.
Like, extremely passive.
Very passive. She doesn't have a lot of personality in the first chapter. Like, she's just doing stuff for her sisters. And she's just, like, living for her sisters and her family and just, like...
Pretty much.
I felt so bad for her, man. Like, she's the main character here, and
I
she's
think,
just, like,
I think they're...
hardly even...
What was that?
I was just gonna say, she's hardly even, like, given any, like, attention, you know what I mean? Which is, I think, purposeful. I
Probably.
Feel like yeah.
So, after their dad dies, so it's built up to be a perfect life. Like, the girls go to this nice school, everything's fine. Well, there's a problem, because he was actually going into debt to send them to school. And so when he dies, it kind of comes to light, and then the stepmom's like, I can't afford to keep you 3 girls here in the shop. Like, it's too much money. So she decides to set them up with apprenticeships. So Letty's the first, and she's like, you are going to go work at this famous pastry shop in town. Like, they have amazing apprenticeships. They care about their people. Like, this is what you're going to do. And it's brought up to, that Fanny was putting her in the way of young men because, you know, like, when you work the counter and stuff, the young men are going to be coming up. It really does come up a lot later. But they're like, oh, you want to marry, and, you know, this, that, and so here's a way to meet young men. But Letty actually isn't happy about that. She actually wants to learn. Like, she wants to continue learning. And so the mom's like, oh, like, you'll learn plenty of things. Like, you'll learn about the business, and, like, it'll be fine. And Letty's just really not happy about that. Martha is going to go be a witch's apprentice. So already it says there are witches.
Yes.
So she's going to go be a witch's apprentice. And witches are... They're set up in an interesting way because they bring up the Witch of the Waste, who she's immediately brought up with this sort of, like, negative connotation. So you immediately think of, like, a villain. So, page 3. It was said the witch had threatened the life of the king's daughter, and that the king had commanded his personal magician, Wizard Suleiman, to go to the waste and deal with the witch. And it seemed that Wizard Suleiman had not only failed to deal with the witch, he had gotten himself killed by her. So immediately, okay, this witch, not good. So you have witches and you have wizards. And if you are a good witch, and, like, you are helpful to your community and whatnot, you're seen as, like, you can get pretty famous, depending on your abilities. So, you know, Martha she's supposed to make her fortune, so she's gonna go be a witch's apprentice, and she's gonna make money, and she's gonna be, you know, powerful, and she's gonna be well known. And then they get to Sophie, and she's like, oh, Sophie, you're gonna work here, in the hat shop. She's like, you know, you already know most of it, you know, it just makes more sense that you're going to inherit the hat shop and you're just going to stay here. And Sophie's actually happy about that. She's like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm good at making hats. Like, she's resigned to this, but in, like, a way that... Yeah, but she's resigned in a way that makes it seem like she's happy about it. She's like, oh, yeah, like, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Sophie also has very little people skills. That's what she has to work on. She talks about how she already knows how to make the hats and everything, and, you know, she already knows all of this. So, yeah, like, I just need to work, you know, Fanny's like, you need to work on, like, selling hats and, like, talking to people. And she's like, okay.
You know, she's bad at it, bro.
She bad. Oh, she's really bad at it.
So bad.
And then on, I think, what is it? It's page 4. So they talk about, after they describe, you know, the Witch of the Waste and everything, they talk about this castle that just appears in the marshes. It says, but the castle stayed roving about the hills, and it was learned that it did not belong to the witch, but to Wizard Howl. Wizard Howl was bad enough. They immediately, Wizard Howl's bad. Too. Like,
Witch and Wizard Howl.
Well, because...
Like, straight up enemies.
With the witch, so the witch is, like, obviously evil. The Wizard Howl is... He has this reputation for, like... pretty much, like... what does it say? Though he did not seem to want to leave the hills, he was known to amuse himself by collecting young girls and sucking the souls from them. or some people said he ate their hearts. He was an utterly cold-blooded and heartless wizard, and no young girl was safe from him if he caught her on her own. So this actually starts something in the town when Wizard Howl shows up, because he's got this reputation as being, like, evil, heart-eater, soul sucker. Yeah. So the girls in the town always travel in, like, groups of 2, because they're like, no, we don't want to be caught unawares by Wizard Howl. Let's see. And then the dad dies, and then talk about the apprenticeship. Let's see. So Sophie does think, with the way that the Witch of the Waste and with Howl have these bad reputations, she thinks that they would be a match together. She's like, they should just get together.
Yeah.
They should just keep their terribleness together. Like, power couple of the century, am I right? The Witch of the Waste, the, killer of Wizard Suleiman, and, the Heart Eater. Yeah, they make a great couple.
Yeah, they fit together. Honestly, I agree with her on that.
Some of my notes I don't understand. Like, this one. Feelings are left to be imagined. Like, I'm like, what? So I think in some of it, like, you get these little hints as to what they're feeling, but Sophie doesn't talk about her feelings. It doesn't go into, like, oh, she felt sad about this, or, like, you get the dialogue, and you're left to kind of infer, based on the, like, context clues, what they're really thinking. Like,
yeah.
what their feelings. It's not, they definitely do not, like, oh, like, lovey-dovey, like, oh, she felt this, and no, you just have to kind of imply, like, you're like, or infer what they're really feeling. Let's see.
I mean, you could definitely tell some of the stuff that she was feeling as she started to, like, with, like, things that she was doing, right? So, like, it would start out with her working in the hat shop, and she was kind of trying to talk with people, but then just, like, whenever the gossip wouldn't work out with, like, stuff, she just started talking to herself and talking to the hats. Like,
well, so that's really interesting.
Gave that, like, kind of insight into her a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, she talks to the hats, but it's, did you notice, though, that, so they talk about Jane Ferrier, who they're, like, she's gossiped about, and nobody really, like, likes her for no good reason.
Yeah.
But when Sophie is talking to the hats, I'm trying to find the exact, so, okay, to one hat, she says, I'm keep jumping around because Letty is seen as thriving. She gets reports back that Letty is thriving at the bakery. Everyone loves her. She's got, like, marriage proposals left, right, and sideways. And then, so as she's talking to the hats, and it's brought up that Letty, so the stepmom didn't really want her in the shop because she said that Letty was bad for business because Letty's so pretty that she would make any woman coming in to buy a hat feel dowdy. And she's like, no, like, she's best where she's at right now.
Yeah.
So to one hat, she says, you have a mysterious allure. And then to another hat, you are going to marry money. So that's the white creamy hat with roses under the brim. Mm-hmm. And to the caterpillar green straw with a curly green feather, she said, you are as young as a spring leaf. And so the mushroom pleated bonnet, this is the important hat. It says, you have a heart of gold, and someone in a high position will see it and fall in love with you. So, Jane Ferrier, the one who everyone's, like, ragging on and whatnot, she buys that hat. So the mushroom hat that, you have a heart of gold. That is very important, because in a later chapter, who does she marry? She marries, who is it? I think he's a count. I think it's a count. Like, he comes to this highborn gentleman comes to the town, and he is actually supposed to be dealing with the whole Wizard Suleiman situation. And he meets Fanny while she's wearing the hat, instantly falls in love with her, and they get married.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something going on with Sophie talking to these hats. Because also, later on, the Witch of the Waste.
Good point. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, so that's a little sprinkle of foreshadowing in there, because she's talking to these hats, and so the mayor's wife is older, and she buys the caterpillar green hat, and everyone starts commenting on how youthful and how like young the mayor's wife seems, and that's the hat that she said that you are young as a spring leaf. So something's going on with Sophie and these hats. Let's see. It's a count. So yes. Then the week before May Day, someone came in and asked for one of the mushroom pleats like the one Jane Ferrier had been wearing when she ran off with the Count of Cataract. So yeah, she ran off with a count, and this is the lady that people are like, no man is ever going to marry her. Like they were really, really ragging on her, and all of a sudden she's married to a count.
Yep.
Like in love too, not just like, oh, it's a marriage of convenience. Let's see. So, also, Sophie wears what is literally described as a demure gray dress. She doesn't try to, like, dress herself in colors or anything like that. She wears a demure gray dress. And when she goes out, she's like, oh, I need my shawl. And it's described as a gray shawl. So Sophie, who has, like, reddish hair, she is constantly wearing gray. Very drab, very... like, it's making her out to be this, like, dowdy sort of, like, frumpy woman. Or young lady. And she talks about wanting more from life, but she's too timid to do anything about it.
Yeah.
You know, she kind of talks about wanting to, like, maybe wanting to go do something else, but she's like, no, I'm the firstborn child. She constantly falls back on that as, like, almost an excuse for why she's not doing more. She's like, she's like, and she has a hard time even leaving the house. Like, she has to build herself up. She says that, like, going to the market, it's like 2 streets away. But she has to run out of every excuse before she will, like, go. Like,
yeah,
she's like...
so bad for her. She's such an introvert, man.
Like, to the painful extremes. She's just like, it's 2 streets away. Maybe if I run really fast, it'll be fine. Like, she spends so much time trying to talk herself up to go see her sister, who's 2 streets away. She's like, I haven't seen her in months. She's like, I should probably go see her, but that laundry needs done. It just, there's a dusty shelf. Just, she comes up with so many excuses before she finally just, like, gets it together. Let's see. So, May Day is one of their holidays, and so she wants to go see her sister, and so she's, like, trying to decide. And then she finally, like, she's like, I could go, like, cake. They have cake. And it's been forever since I've had one. So, yeah, maybe I should go.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so, but when she had last put a gray shawl over her gray dress, they're like, gray. And went out on into the street. Sophie did not feel excited. She felt overwhelmed. Sophie is overstimulated already.
Yep.
There were too many people rushing past, laughing and shouting, far too much noise and jostling. Sophie felt as if the past months of sitting and sewing had turned her into an old woman or semi-invalid. That is also foreshadowing. She feels like an old dowdy woman.
Yeah.
She feels it. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. She's just like, yeah. She's like, I don't want to go out. I just want to put on my pajamas and just sit at home. Let's see. So they talk about the wizard's tower or castle a little bit more. Sophie was too terrified to care. So it talks about whether or not Howl would come to the town and join in the festivities, but Sophie was too terrified to care. She would have gone home, except that she was halfway to Cesari's by then, so she ran. She literally made it one street over, was so overwhelmed that she's like, I should go back. I'm already halfway there. I will sprint the rest of the way. Like,
Poor girl, man.
Sophie sprinting from her anxiety. Girls strolled in fine pairs, ready to be accosted. So the girls go in pairs, and now they're just like, oh, we finally got to the good part. So
whenever the gentleman approaches.
It was a perfectly normal day, and it was perfectly normal for May Day, but Sophie was scared of that too. And when a young man in a fantastical blue and silver costume spotted Sophie and decided to accost her as well, Sophie shrank into a shop doorway and tried to hide. The young man looked at her in surprise. "It's all right, you little gray mouse," he said, laughing rather pityingly. "I only want to buy you a drink. Don't look so scared." The pitying look made Sophie utterly ashamed. He was such a dashing specimen, with a bony, sophisticated face, really quite old, well into his 20s. So she thinks that he's old. I don't know if it specifically says how old Sophie is, but I'm imagining she's like 18 or 19. But she sees him as like old, and he's like probably like 26. She's like, this like old man.
Right? She's like, oh, such an old guy. And it's just like, I don't know, some of the ages here, bro, I'm like,
yeah,
a little sus, but alright.
Let's see. And elaborate blonde hair. His sleeves trailed longer than any in the square, all scalloped edges and silver insets. "Oh, no, thank you, if you please, sir," Sophie stammered. I'm on my way to see my sister." "Then by all means, do so," laughed this advanced young man. Advanced. She's like,
Advanced, bro.
They're really pushing this narrative that Howl is like, well into his 20s, this old man.
Howl, spoilers, bro.
Oh, come on.
I assumed. But
I mean, that has main character energy written all over it.
Yeah, you don't have, like, this kind of interaction just for nothing.
Like, her dad didn't even get a name. Her dad didn't even get a name, and this man gets, like, this big old description on what he looks like.
Yeah.
It's, okay, it's called spoiler alert for a reason. So let's see. "Who am I to keep a pretty lady?" So he says pretty lady from her sister. "Would you like me to go with you, since you seem so scared?" He meant it kindly, which made Sophie more ashamed than ever. No, thank you, sir," she gasped and fled away past him. He wore perfume, too. The smell of hyacinths followed her as she ran. What a courtly person, Sophie thought as she pushed her way between the little tables outside Cesari's. So she's like, immediately, this man, he's pretty. Oh my gosh. She's so mortified by this interaction. The fact that he's being nice to her, and he's like, you seem kind of scared. Like, do you want me to go with you? And she's like, oh my gosh, I can walk in this street. I'm a normal person.
Social interactions, run.
Pretty much. She's so twisted up about interacting with people, and she's so scared of, like, everything. And I think being shut in at the shop, because she's already a timid person, so it's much easier for her to just stay at the shop and just make hats and just all of that. And when she has to interact, I think after spending so long in the shop, it made it harder on her. So now she just stays at the shop constantly because she's just afraid to interact with people. And then all of a sudden, this interaction with this courtly person, this old 20-something, makes me feel a little like, feeling a little old here.
Right.
But, and she describes him as he's being kind. He's being kind, he's laughing, he's, he offered to buy her a drink, like, and, like, probably, like, a lemonade or something, because he's not like, let me buy you a drink.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he just, And he calls her pretty. And I think Sophie definitely struggled more with that part.
I think she just struggles with, like, social interactions in general. Like, she just doesn't know how to handle them. You know what I mean? Like, social anxiety at its finest. Like, she just doesn't interact with people.
She's
at
like,
all.
People. Let's see. And so now they're in... So this place is built, like, it's a big place. Like, the counter's huge. There are a lot of people behind the counter. So Letty's one of them. But there are a lot of, like, among the line of assistants at the counters, because of the group's evidence, farmers' sons leaning their elbows on it to shout remarks to her. Letty, prettier than ever and perhaps a little thinner, was putting cakes into bags as fast as she could, giving each bag a deft little twist and looking back under her own elbow with a smile and an answer for each bag she twisted. There was a great deal of laughter. Sophie had to fight her way to the counter. So, yeah, it's a busy, busy place. And Letty's just, like, living it up, which is kind of odd because she was so, like, she was very, very upset about it. She didn't say that, like, no, I don't want to go to the bakery. But, like, you could tell she's upset. She didn't want to go. And now she's thriving. All these, guys are paying attention to her. And she's just like, oh, yeah. Like, having the time of her life.
Living her best life.
Like, did that strike you as odd at all?
Yes, absolutely. I was like, didn't she hate this? I am confused, but at least she's living her life now. At least she's happy with it, I guess.
Okay, so, like...
my thought, right?
Yeah, so it's set as, like, oh, well, I guess she's doing well. Like, thumbs up. Like,
yeah.
It all worked out for the best.
Like,
and
you know what? If she's enjoying it, kudos.
So, Letty saw her. She looked shaken for a moment. So, Letty sees Sophie, and it's weird that she's almost afraid for a second. It's like, wait, what? Like, yeah. Why would she be afraid to see her own sister? So they go to the back, and, like, as soon as Letty starts to move to the back, all the guys are like, oh no, come on, stay! And the girl who takes her place is like, nah, you gotta deal with me. So, like, Letty's super popular.
Everybody likes Letty. All the guys fawning after her.
Like, for real. So Letty, like, drags her back into the back of the shop. So Letty tells her to sit down. She's like, yeah, just sit down. And she hands her a piece of cake and says, you may need this. Emotional support cake for the win. Like, if I ever receive bad news, they better give it to me with cake.
Right?
Like,
the best way to receive news.
Best way. So they're building up to something. They're like, okay, like, what's, you sit down, here's some cake. So, let's see. Sophie sank onto
I feel like Sophie was just overwhelmed here. Like, she was just, like, not able to think anything. She's just like, okay, I see my sister finally.
So the whole relief thing, Sophie sank onto the stool, breathing the rich smell of the cake and feeling a little tearful. I think she was finally just, like, so, like, she's like, okay, I made it to the shop.
Yeah, she's like, I made it, I saw my sister, I got through this.
I got cake!
I made it here. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's...
And then the fucking spoiler, like, insane plot twist of the century. I was not ready for it.
Oh, right? It says, oh, Letty, I'm so glad to see you. Yes, and I am glad you're sitting down. Yes, I'm glad you're sitting down, said Letty. You see, I'm not Letty. I'm Martha. And you're just like, what? Like...
Right. That plot, bro. I put the book down at that point and I was like, what?
So, yeah, no, this whole time that everything's been, like, going so swimmingly for Letty, and, like, she's been, like, having all these men propose and whatnot, it's not Letty, it's Martha.
Yep.
And then you're like, well, how would you not know? It gets into that. Let's see. Notes for chapter...
Wait, did my sound not go off? It did go off. I heard it, Panda, don't worry. Sorry, they're redeeming centipede sound on me. Anyway.
Okay. So, chapter 2, in which Sophie is compelled to seek her fortune. Not Sophie decided to. No, she was compelled to do it. She had to do it.
Yeah.
So, obviously, Sophie's a little like, what? What? Sophie stared at the girl on the stool opposite her. She looked just like Letty. She was wearing Letty's second best blue dress, a wonderful blue that suited her perfectly. She had Letty's dark hair and blue eyes. I am Martha, said her sister. Who did you catch cutting up Letty's silk drawers? I never told Letty that. Did you? So immediately, Martha's like, I gotta prove I'm not Letty. So she tells her a secret that only the two of them know. And she's like, okay, so this is real. So, yeah, Sophie's obviously stunned.
Yep.
And the thing is after she is told and after she starts believing, like, oh yeah, this is Martha, she could see it was Martha now. There was Martha's tilt to Letty's head and Martha's way of clasping her hands around her knees with her thumbs twiddling. So now that she knows, she's starting to see these little mannerisms of her sister. I think this proves how much she cares about her sisters and how much she knows them, because she knows these little mannerisms. Like, it's Letty sitting in front of her physically, but she can see those little things that it's like, oh, no, that's Martha. So what did you think of that segment? And that's literally the first page of chapter 2.
That, like, section, well, like, for me reading, like, the section whenever she's just talking with, like, Martha, it just, like, confirmed for me what I was saying kind of in the beginning, that, like, this entire idea of the sisters being, you know, because she's the eldest of 3, she's going to have misfortune, and the youngest is going to have the great fortune. It literally was, Martha just put a twist into everything that Sophie knew or thought she knew, making me feel like that entire idea of misfortune to the eldest of the 3 sisters is just an idea Sophie has, as opposed to it being, like, what society has for them, and that Sophie could actually, if she's not being put into this mindset that I feel like the stepmother has put onto her, that she could actually go out and do more, but she's so set in her ways. Poor Sophie's so set in, like, no, I can't do it because I'm the eldest of 3. There's just no possibility. But clearly with Martha and Letty just, like, swapping places, and they're like, we can do whatever we want. I just wish Sophie so badly would do the same thing, just be like, you know what, I can go and do these things. I can go and get a fortune and that kind of stuff.
I think
just that entire thing, it just validated what I was thinking with that mindset.
I think there's a fair bit of influence from the stepmom, because I think it's mostly Sophie, but the stepmom sees that and kind of uses that.
Yeah.
But it's Sophie's belief.
Martha talked about that too, right? With
yeah,
that,
it's a little later in their interaction.
Yeah.
But and it's funny. So as they're interacting, Martha then drops another bomb on her, and she says, I want to get married and have 10 children. You're like, what? Like, and Sophia is immediately, like, flustered by this. She goes, you're not old enough. And she's like, well, I mean, not yet, but, like, if I want 10 kids, the sooner the better. But it's, you know, that's not considered fortune seeking. So Sophie's so thrown off, I think, more by the ideas and the foundation that she had of her beliefs, that she's, like, shaken to her core, because she's like, she's not going to seek her fortune?
Yeah.
And I think Sophie's so scared to do anything else, because I think that's just her personality. And she uses that belief of, like, being the eldest as an excuse and a crutch to not do anything important with her life, or, like, go out and do anything. So seeing her sister very blatantly, like, destroy that foundation, now she's just kind of like, she's like, okay. Because it was supposed to be Letty who wanted to get married and, you know, have a family and all that. And no, Martha wants to have kids.
And again, like, that is just, like, the mother, I feel like, not saying that the stepmother was like that bad or awful, but she was just like, I feel, forcing the ideas on the three daughters, and Sophie just agreed with it. She's just like, yeah, this is the way life is, as opposed to the other two. And it kind of went to show too that even as much as Sophie knew her sisters, not knowing these things, kind of,
The big
I
important
feel like it
things.
was just, yeah, like important things. Sophie knew them from like one standpoint, but at the same time she didn't really know them. Like clearly the other two sisters knew more of what each other wanted, that kind of thing. Sophie was just still so stuck. I feel so bad for her in this mindset that the stepmother gave her.
Yeah, so Martha tells her that she and Letty arranged this situation. So Martha did initially go to the witch to become her apprentice, and she was there 2 weeks, and then she found a spell to switch their appearances, and so she liked the lady. The lady was nice, but it's not what she wanted, and it wasn't what Letty wanted, and because Letty wanted to use her brain. Like, Letty wanted something different for herself. So the girls arranged it. They swapped places. They parent trapped. And, she talks about, like, initially she had a little bit of a hard time getting used to the the bakery, because she's been in training, supposedly, for 2 weeks, and then she just switched, and she's like, I don't know anything. But so the girls switched. Yeah, Sophie's obviously, she's just, like, shaken by it. And then that is when they bring up, let's see, because Martha's the one who brings up Fanny's treatment of her.
Yeah. It's brought up with the wage, because Martha's like, oh yeah, I'm an apprentice, but I'm still getting paid for the job, and Sophie's not getting paid at all for all of the work, and all of, like, Martha's like, oh, you've made all of these amazing hats and everybody knows you and you're making this amazing business and you're not getting paid? Like, what do you mean? Like, you're totally getting used by the stepmother. She's literally just taking advantage of you, and she's like, oh no, the business is still struggling. Like, it's not doing well, and Martha's just like, that's literally a lie.
Like, yeah, she's like, Sophie's like, oh
she's
no,
just
like,
lying to you.
She's like, Mother's out, like, talking to the vendors and whatnot. She's like, that takes her half of a morning. Like, after that, she's, like, off in the shops and whatnot.
Yeah.
This
money, she's going and looking at, like, buying a mansion or something, they said, too, with all the work that Sophie's doing. Like, bruh, she's just exploiting her.
So Martha points out that so Sophie is like, I never knew you wanted kids, and she said, well, it wasn't much good going on about it when you were so busy backing Mother up about me making my fortune. So Sophie also put this on the girls. Like, she also, like, really enforced, like, you're the youngest, you go make your fortune. And I don't think she meant it as a way of, like, forcing her sister into this path, but she did heavily encourage it.
Believed. It's what she thought. It just like how she thought that she had to, be the oldest. She was going to only have misfortune. She was going to inherit the shop. It felt like what Sophie believed had to be the way that they had to live. It's like, well, you are the youngest. It just makes sense. You're going to make your fortune. And so it's not that she's forcing it on it, kind of like the stepmother was. I think it was just literally what she thinks has to happen, just the way life is.
It's kind of interesting. I think you feel more empathy for Sophie than I do, because I see a lot of this stuff with Sophie. So Sophie, if the shop was not an issue, like, that's just, if it was any other business and whatnot, she would be the same. Like, she in her core believes this, and I don't think it's the mother, because growing up, she never really, like, she just knew this, and I don't think it was enforced very much until she got older. Like, and then when they did their apprenticeship and whatnot, because Sophie went to school. She did the same things as the girls, but she still has this belief, like, no, I can't do any of this stuff because I'm just the eldest child. And I think she's too scared to go do anything. And so she uses all of these beliefs to just reinforce that she doesn't want to go do anything. Like, exactly. She's just like, no.
I guess the reason that I'm saying that it's the stepmother is because she has to have had, like, this idea from somewhere. It didn't just pop up out of nowhere. And I doubt that the father was doing this. I'm not really sure. But, like, the fact that the stepmother just knew to have her there, and the fact that later, like, the stepmother is showing how she's, like, exploiting her and stuff, it just feels like that's what the stepmother was saying to her growing up, leading her into this kind of mindset. So it was unfair, I feel, for Sophie, because she never thought she could achieve more than that, even though she was getting, like, the education and whatnot. But I don't know about the father. I don't think the father was putting that stuff on her.
I don't
know.
remember. I feel like somebody else brought it up at one point, the whole, like, eldest of three thing. And it wasn't anybody in the family. But
I'm not sure. I hadn't read anywhere else other than it seeming like I said, it seems like it's like all of society is in agreement with this at the start, but I feel like the book is framing it from Sophie that she's set in thinking that it's society thinking this when really it's just the mindset she was forced into from her stepmother. So
I
they're
th-
framing it like it's society, but it's really just her thinking that it's society. You know what I mean?
I think we'll always have a fundamental disagreement about this.
Maybe. Yeah.
Because a lot of this, like, every time Sophie talks about wanting more, I think she's letting it hold her back. I don't think that... And they do bring up later, like, the whole wages thing. She does talk to her stepmom about the wages, and she's like, oh, okay, I'll talk to you about it after I do the accounting tonight. And then it's just never brought up, and she's like,
Yeah,
huh.
but she just never does anything
She's
about
like,
it.
maybe there was some truth to that. But she still doesn't do anything about it. Like, Sophie, instead of bringing it up again, she's just like, oh, okay. She's like, that's it, I guess. Like, Sophie doesn't stand up for herself at all. And the girls, both of the girls are like, hey. Like, Martha especially is like, you should be treated better. You should want better for yourself. Like, Martha wants better for Sophie than Sophie wants better for Sophie.
Mm-hmm.
Sophie's just willing to... I think so long as she doesn't have to stray out of what she's comfortable with, Sophie's willing to go along with anything. Because she's like, well, I mean, she's like, I could still live here, and, like, it's fine, I guess. Just, she doesn't push for herself.
No, but it's because she's stuck in this mind that she's not going to ever get anything because she's the eldest of three. So she just thinks that she can never achieve anything.
And then
I feel so bad for her.
She finally... So after she says, maybe I am being exploited, but someone has to do this or there will be no hats at all to sell. So she's like, she's taking that responsibility on herself. Instead of like, well, maybe they can hire a new hatter. Like, she's taking all of that responsibility on herself and not like, not willing to think of any other solutions. And
I think it's because it's just like, it's what she knows, right? It's what she's comfortable with. And she doesn't want to change. She doesn't want to, like, have to deal with figuring out something new. It's just, she's like, I know hats. I want to make hats. And she's just stuck.
Yeah, and, like, she has this growing sense of, like, discontent that she's not... let's see. So, let's see. She looked around the assembled hats on stands or waiting in a heap to be trimmed. What good are you all? She asked them. You certainly aren't doing me a scrap of good. And she was within an ace of leaving the house and setting out to seek her fortune, until she remembered that she was the eldest of three and there was no point. Like, she gets this like, wave of like, fine, I'm gonna go out and do something. And she goes, nah, that thing.
I feel like it's just, like, hopelessness, though. It's not necessarily, like, oh, that thing is stopping me. It's just, like, you know, she has this dream of, like, maybe I could actually do something. But then that mind of just being like, oh, no, I'm the eldest of three. I can't get fortune. That's just not for me. That's for the youngest.
So...
And it just drops her back down, you know?
I think the reason I don't want to coddle Sophie as a character is because of chapter 3, after what happens. Let's get through chapter 2, and we'll get to that. But she is capable of way more, and she does way more. She's using her youth and her situation as an excuse to not go out and do something. Because later on, she's totally different. Although, yeah, there's a big plot twist there.
I mean, there's a reason, though.
But, okay, so this lady comes into the shop. She's obviously a very, like, affluent woman.
Oh my gosh, this was my favorite part. I'm not even gonna lie, I loved this.
So, yeah, and she notices the lady's hat. She goes into details about the hat. Let's see. So the lady's wearing a dense black dress. Sophie's eyes went to the lady's hat first, to the lady's wide hat first. Real ostrich plumes dyed to reflect the pinks and greens and blues twinkling in the diamonds, and yet still looked black. Wait.
You're ahead of where I was thinking we were at. I was thinking about whenever, okay, I did take notes on this because I loved this. This was before it reached that lady. Different lady walked into the shop, and it showed, like, Sophie's personality for the first time.
Oh, I meant to talk about that.
I'm too far ahead.
No,
yeah.
She had a fit of temper, and she lost a customer.
I loved it because, like, the customer would come in and they were, like, complaining. They're like, you said this was the same hat as, like, the bonnet that Jane Ferrier wore that got her to marry a count.
Yeah.
And, like, nothing happened for me. And then Sophie, like, I have this page open even. Sophie's just like, if you're a fool enough to wear that bonnet with a face like that, you wouldn't have the wit to spot the king himself if he came begging. If he hadn't turned to stone first just at the side of you. Like, oh, the diss. I loved it. I was like, damn.
Like...
So sassy. I love it.
See, so Sophie has it in her. She gets angry. She's like, I'm not being treated well. These people are like, why is this lady coming in and yelling at me? Like, why did you expect the hat to do the exact same thing? And that also points something out, because Sophie said the whole, like, you have a heart of gold, you'll marry somebody, you know, fancy, whatnot. Like, she said that to that specific hat.
Yeah.
And that got that result. It can't be assumed she said that to this, like, said the same thing to each hat. So that also is a little bit of a But yeah, Sophie gets...
whenever this customer had bought that hat, I don't remember if Sophie had said earlier, or I think at one point she was like, that hat doesn't fit that person or something.
I don't know about, because she goes into the, like, with the Witch of the Waste, and then her stepmom did tell her, like, if you want to sell hats, always start with a hat that doesn't fit, like, doesn't go with them, and, like, work your way up to a hat that, like, would work for them, as a sales technique. But she does that with the Witch of the Waste. So, this lady who comes in, and you can see that they give more detail to the people who are going to be more important. Mm-hmm. Because she described this was a wealthy hat. The lady's face was carefully beautiful. Interesting choice of words. Carefully beautiful. The chestnut brown hair made her seem young, but Sophie's eyes took in the young man who followed the lady in, a slightly formless-faced person with reddish hair, quite well dressed, but pale and obviously upset. So, this lady comes in. She's obviously very fancy. She's got diamonds. Mm-hmm. Like, this lady is pretty darn fancy. And so this lady addresses Sophie by name, or it was Miss Hatter. And Sophie acknowledges, yes. And it really points out the man. So earlier, right before they talk, he stared at Sophie with a kind of beseeching horror. He was clearly younger than the lady. Sophie was puzzled. Then, Miss Hatter, yada yada yada. So the man looked more upset than ever when Sophie acknowledges that she is Miss Hatter. Like, he's like, ugh.
Like, he's freaking out.
Like, he is freaking the F out. And the slightly formless face, it makes you think that something's up. Like, what? There's this eeriness to this part.
Yeah.
So she wants a hat, obviously, because she came to a hat shop. And Sophie's noticing, like, this lady's fancy. None of the hats that she has are going to be of the caliber that this woman's looking for. And she's, so the man's watching her as she's kind of, like, looking around at the hats. And she's like, well, the sooner the lady discovers the hats were wrong for her, the sooner this odd pair would go. So she went, and she followed Fanny's advice to sell a hat, and she went with the worst option first. And so, the lady began rejecting the hats instantly. Dimples, she said to the pink bonnet, and youth to the caterpillar green one. To the one of twinkles and veils, she said, mysterious allure. How very obvious. What else have you? So, everything that Sophie said to these hats, this lady knows.
She was on exactly the same page as Sophie with it.
She's picking up on something about these hats.
Yeah.
So, obviously she's not satisfied with any of the hats. And then Sophie starts to get a little snippy with her. She said, let's see. The lady looked at it with contempt. So it's a different hat. It's a black and white hat. This one doesn't do anything for anybody. You're wasting my time, Miss Hatter. So the other hats, she said specifically what Sophie was saying when she made the hats. This black and white hat doesn't have anything. So it can't do anything for anyone. So they're really pushing hard for you to see what's going on with Sophie. But Sophie snips at her. Only because you came in and asked for hats, Sophie said. This is only a small shop in a small town, madam. Why did you... Behind the lady, the man gasped and seemed to be trying to signal warningly. Bother to come in, Sophie finished, wondering what was going on. So this guy is like, stop talking! He's trying.
He knows something is gonna happen. He's like, you can't say that to her. Like, yeah.
Like, and Sophie's temper gets the best of her. And, like, so she's like, you're wasting my time. Well, yeah, you came in here. And so Sophie's getting a little feisty pants. And this lady's, let's see. I always bother when someone tries to set themselves up against the Witch of the Wastes, said the lady. I've heard of you, Miss Hatter, and I don't care for your competition or your attitude. I came to put a stop to you. There. So, not only does she say she's the Witch of the Waste, but the Witch of the Waste sees Sophie as competition. So it's like, well, it brings to mind, like, what about Sophie is in competition with the Witch of the Waste? What were your thoughts on that?
Be real, I hadn't thought about that before, but honestly, pointing that out, clearly Sophie has to have some kind of magic or something going on with this, right? And it's saying the competition of the Witch of the Waste. I just don't know enough about the witch. I know that they're setting her up to be evil, and obviously what she does, right, is not good either. But, her being competition, what is the witch? I just want to know more about the witch before I would come up with a good idea of that. I don't know. I mean, I imagine it's going to go into more detail with the witch, considering how involved she is.
Oh, it does.
In the situation. So there's probably going to be more about it. But yeah, I don't know at this point.
So yeah, after she says, your competition, she spread her hand in a flinging motion towards Sophie's face. And so now Sophie's scared. She's like, oh, you're the Witch of the Waste. Her voice seemed to have gone strange with fear and astonishment. That's pointing out what's about to happen. So her voice changed. I am, said the lady, and let that teach you to meddle in things that belong to me. Sophie says, I don't think I did. There must be some mistake, Sophie croaked. The man was now staring at her in utter horror, though she could not see why. "No mistake, Miss Hatter," said the witch. "Come, Gaston." She turned and swept to the shop door. While the man was humbly opening it for her, she turned back to Sophie. "By the way, you won't be able to tell anyone you're under a spell," she said. The shop door tolled like a funeral bell as she left. So, the little flick of the hand, she cast a spell on Sophie. And Sophie cannot say she's under a spell. And then after that, Sophie put
a casual flick of the wrist. Okay, you're under a spell now. Like,
yep. Sophie put her hands to her face, wondering what the man had stared at. She felt soft, leathery wrinkles. She looked at her hands. They were wrinkled too and skinny, with large veins in the back and knuckles like knobs. She pulled her gray skirt against her legs and looked down at skinny, decrepit ankles and feet which had made her shoes all knobbly. They were the legs of someone about 90, and they seemed to be real. Sophie got herself to the mirror and found she had to hobble. The face in the mirror was quite calm, because it was what she expected to see. That's the point! Sophie has this self-fulfilling prophecy. She felt like an old lady. She had all this, she built herself up like this, and she's calm when she sees what the witch has done to her. She's like, this 90-year-old lady in the mirror, and she's like, yeah, that tracks. Like,
yep.
Sophie's
just
so
entirely unfazed.
Like, unfazed. She's just immediately, like, she accepts being turned from, like, a 19-year-old, 18, 19-year-old to a 90-year-old woman. She's like, yeah, that fits.
She's like, yeah, this is right.
Yep. So she's got,
I couldn't believe that.
Wispy white hair. Let's see. "Don't worry, old thing," she said to the face. "You look quite healthy. Besides, this is much more like you really are." Sophie embodies this old woman, and when she finally looks the way she feels, she's like, cool, don't worry, you're healthy, you're good.
She just accepted it.
Like, without question, I'd be like, ah! I'd be freaking out, and Sophie's just like, yeah. Let's see. She thought about her situation quite calmly. Everything seemed to have gone quite calm and remote. She was not even particularly angry with the Witch of the Waste. "Well, of course I shall have to do for her when I get the chance," she told herself. "But meanwhile, if Letty and Martha can stand being one another, I can stand being like this. But I can't stay here. Fanny would have a fit. Let's see. This gray dress is quite suitable, but I shall need a shawl and some food." So immediately, she's just like, yeah, okay, I guess we're gonna go. Like, my face is going to be a little unsettling, so,
As soon as that happened, I was like, you're literally just going up, like, you're just leaving. Like, I couldn't understand that entirely. I was like, why are you just walking out? She's just like, I'm old now. Okay, I'm gonna leave.
Because
like,
that's the whole point. That's why I can't coddle Sophie in the beginning. Because she has the power. But now that she's old, like now she's an old lady, now she feels free to do whatever the heck she wants. She becomes a whole different character.
I don't know if it's that she feels free to do whatever she wants. I feel like she was leaving for, like, a reason. Like, she just didn't want people to see her being old. People would throw a fit over her, so she's just like, I'll just leave to not cause a problem for anybody.
That's in chapter 3. Like, Sophie talks about, now that I'm an old woman, like, she literally is like, I can do what I want now because I'm old.
But, like, necessarily, well, now that I'm old, I can do whatever I want. I'm free to do whatever. It's more of like, now that she is old, now that she's in this place, now that she's in this situation, she might as well do something different with it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's something that was thrown at her to change up how she was living her life, because she wasn't going to change. So this change kind of enabled her to do that.
I think we'll get into the nitty-gritty on that in chapter 3. We still have a little bit of chapter. So, okay, she sets out, and so that's the thing, she's going out with purpose, because she starts going towards the marshes. So she's responsible. She closes down the shop and everything. She grabs her shawl, grabs some food. And, like, she keeps describing how calm she feels now. She was so freaked out and so, like, scared of everything when she was a young lady. Now that she's an old woman, she's like, I'm serene, I'm calm. Like, whole different character.
I think it's just because, like, she's not holding that pressure of being herself anymore. You know what I mean? Like, she no longer has to take care of the shop. She no longer has to do all of these things. Instead, she's just an old woman and she has no responsibility. So she's like, well, this is it. I guess I'll just be this now.
Well, she heads out to the marshes. That's where she finds Turnip Head, the scarecrow with the turnip's head.
Yes.
She finds the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, so let's see. Where is... let's see. Because there is a thing. Let's see.
Oh yeah, and this is where whenever she set out, she was going to, like, start trying to, like, find her fortune.
It's not her fortune.
She was saying stuff like that. She's like, you know, I'm just at one part of it where she was talking to the scarecrow, saying, like, you could come to life and offer me to help in making my fortune, but I wish you luck anyway. Like, so she's got in her mind that she's like, well, now that I'm old and I'm on my way, might as well try finding my fortune. Maybe I can find one, is kind of where she's at.
Okay, so she's here when she finds the dog that's trapped in the bush. So, let's see. As a girl, Sophie was scared of all dogs, even as an old woman. So she's already, like, left behind the idea that she was, like, she's like, back in my youth, that was 20 minutes ago. Like, she's already, like, nah, that's not me anymore. She's like, I'm an old lady.
Yeah.
Even as an old woman, she was quite alarmed by the 2 rows of white fangs in the creature's open jaw, but she said to herself, the way I am now, it's scarcely worth worrying about, and felt in her sewing pocket for her scissors. So she's not scared of the dog, really. She's like, but she's like, it's not worth worrying about. I'm an old woman, I don't care. The dog was very wild. It flinched away from her and growled, but Sophie sawed bravely on it. You'll starve or throttle to death, my friend, she told the dog in her cracked old voice. Unless you let me cut you loose, in fact, Unless you let me cut you loose. In fact, I think someone has tried to throttle you already. Maybe that accounts for your wildness. The rope had been tied quite tightly around the dog's neck, and the stick had been twisted viciously into it. It took a lot of sawing before the rope parted, and the dog was able to drag itself out from under the stick. So she's immediately using, like, I'm an old woman, there's no use in worrying. I think we have this thing. I'm not nice to Sophie, and it's not that I'm not nice to her, but now that she's old, she's like, yeah, no, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, now that she feels justified in doing whatever she wants to now. She's like, I'm old. Like, she was
justified as much as it's just, she's just settled. She's just like, this is just what I am now. I'm just an old woman. What does it matter?
So she just resigns herself to anything put in front of her. She's just like, oh, yeah, I'm an old lady. Meh. Let's see. So then she meets the countryman, the shepherd. Let's see. So she's immediately feisty. So he says, yes. Good evening to you, mother. Where are you off to? Mother, said Sophie. I'm not your mother, young man. A manner of speaking, the shepherd said, edging along the opposite hedge. I was only meaning a polite inquiry, seeing you walking into the hills at the end of the day. You won't get down into Upper Folding before nightfall, will you? Sophie had not considered this. She stood in the road and thought about it. It doesn't matter, really, she said half to herself. You can't be fussy when you're off to seek your fortune. Okay, so she does say off to seek your fortune. I find it funny that the way she's going off to seek her fortune is towards the castle, because she was afraid of it as a girl, and now she's like, meh. Now she doesn't care.
Yeah, but, and I mean, she even says at one point in the book, she's like, as a girl, you know, they're worried about how, what was it, like, eating their souls or eating their hearts and stealing their souls or whatever.
But I'm an old lady now. He not gonna want me.
Now, so he's like, yeah, exactly. So she's just like, she has that, like, freedom to be able to do stuff now. She's like, I'm old. It doesn't matter. He's not gonna come after me. Like,
see, freedom. She's using the, like, I'm old. Now she's just like, yeah, I can do whatever the heck I want.
I mean, yeah, basically.
So she goes, like, he thinks that she's a witch, and she's just like, hey. Like, kind of has a little cackle to herself. And then she looks back down, like, towards the city. She goes, oh my gosh, I barely made it. She's like, I barely made it a stone's throw away.
She's like, I walked all day and I can see the roof of my house
yep.
still. This is not far enough.
So she's all achy, and I never realized before that old people had to, what old people had to put up with. She panted and labored uphill. Still, I don't think wolves will eat me. I must be far too dry and tough. Like, young Sophie. Oh, she also talks about how she sees this guy as a young man. He's in his 40s, and she's like, oh, you young whippersnapper. Like, she turns so fast in her character. Like, all of a sudden now she's like, oh, you young man. I'm like, Sophie.
Right, before it was advanced young man for a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Like,
and now she's...
Bro.
And I'm like, she immediately acts like she has, like, all these years on her, but she's I'm like, Sophie, you could be his child, and you're just like, oh, you young man. Like I said, back in my youth 20 minutes ago.
Like, I love it. I love Sophie's entire sass personality. Like, I love it.
Old Sophie is just young Sophie giving herself permission to act how she actually is. Sophie she's a cranky introvert who never wants to leave her house, and she's like, I don't want to talk to people. But now that she's an old lady, she's like, I can act like I want. Like,
yeah, she basically she literally can. She can be like herself without having to, you know, be worried about anything else. And I love that. I love her sassiness. I love her sarcasm. I live for her character, man.
Okay, and then, so as the night's coming, the castle comes up. Like, Sophie was not particularly frightened. She wondered, beforehand, she's like, oh my gosh, this town, like, she's so scared of the castle and everything, and, like, the wizard Howl. Yeah. And now she's up close and personal with it. She's like, I wonder how it moves. Now she's curious. Now she's just like, meh. She's like, it's kind of cool. I want to see what's going on.
She doesn't have that same fear anymore that she had whenever she was young. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, she's completely changed now, and now that she's old, she can do whatever the heck she wants, and she's not going to be scared, and she's allowing herself to experience life more as a 90-year-old woman than she was when she was a young lady. I thought it was really interesting that she tells, like, the castle's, like, coming up on her, and she yells, stop, and it does. Like, it listens to her.
Yeah, that one was interesting. I had so many questions about that.
Yeah, like, she just, like, holds up her hand, stop! And it's just like, okay. Like, such an impressive magical object. And it just listens to her. Like, okay. Which brings us to chapter 3, in which Sophie enters into a castle and a bargain. I love the chapter titles.
Right.
So, she tries to get in, and she tries to get in through 2 different doors, but there's, like, a barrier. So it's protected by magic. Mm-hmm. And she can't just barge her way in.
Even though she tries, man.
Like, she gives it the old college try. And then she goes around again and finds a 3rd door. Oh, and whenever she sees that there's a barrier over 2 of the doors, Sophie glowered at it. I call that very unwelcoming. So she's mad that she can't break into this random dude's house.
She's She's like, why is this house not letting me in, bro? This isn't fair.
Yeah, she's mad about it. I'm like, Sophie, that's not your house.
She became so entitled. She's just like, but she's an old woman. She does what she wants now.
Yeah.
If she wants in the house, she's going in the house.
Black smoke blew down the battlements in clouds. Sophie coughed. Now she was angry. She was old, frail, chilly, and aching all over. Night was coming on, and the castle just sat and blew smoke at her. I'll speak to Howl about this, she said, and set off fiercely to the next corner. Like, bro, that's his house, and you're like, I'm an old, frail woman. I demand entry into your house.
I love it.
Like,
I thought it was so funny.
Like, she immediately, instead of like, oh, this young man tried to talk to me, like, okay, back when she was a young lady yesterday, when she was in the town square, she freaked out when the dude tried to talk to her. Like, she hid in the doorway, she's like, please don't look at me, I'm so scared, you're so beautiful, don't talk to me, and now she's like, I'm gonna speak to that wizard about him not letting me in his house.
Yeah, literally, like, her social anxiety just entirely disappeared.
Melted away.
Entirely disappeared for her. I really do love that.
Yeah, it was like, and that's why I'm like, Sophie had it in her all along. Now she's just using the facade of being old. Because she's not old. Like, in her brain, she's not old. She's still 19. But she immediately embraces this persona of this old lady. And she's using it as a cover to just, like, act as she normally is. So she's feisty. And we got to see that back in the shop when she yelled at that lady. She's had this in her this whole time. She's just waiting for an excuse, a go-ahead, to act however she wanted. And now she's justified. So yeah, there's a third door. It's smaller and shabbier. And so the castle starts moving. And she's just like, oh no you don't. And she, like, runs to the door, grabs it, and she's like, she tells the door to open up. The door sprang open inward, still moving away sideways. Sophie, by hobbling furiously, managed to get 1 foot up on its doorstep. Then she hopped and scrambled and hopped again, while the great black blocks round the door jolted and crunched as the castle gathered speed over the uneven hillside. And then, so she talks, the marvel was that it did not fall apart on the spot. What a stupid way to treat a building, she panted. So she's just mad about everything. Like, not your house, it's not letting you in, you're mad about it. The castle looks like it's piecemeal put together. And then she's just like, I'm gonna talk to Howl. She's like, this is a stupid way to treat a building?
I love it. I love everything about it. More power to Sophie here, man.
Like, Sophie went from the little gray mouse to Sophie the Menace.
I love it.
Like, she became a force to be reckoned with, like, overnight. And
Freedom that it gave her, man, to be old.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she's like, this is the gift of my life to have 70 years taken off.
You know what? If that's what it takes for her to start living her life, then kudos for her.
So then we meet a new character. When she began to get her breath, she realized there was a person standing in front of her, holding the door too. He was a head taller than Sophie, but she could see he was the merest child, only a little older than Martha. Martha is literally like 3 years younger than Sophie. So Martha's probably like 16. And she's talking about him like he's a baby. And he's probably
like 80 now or whatever. So.
But like, literally, mentally, they are he's maybe a year or two younger than Sophie herself. But she's like, nope, old lady, you are but a youth, but a babe. Like, she's so far embraced. Like, she looks at this guy, meeting him for the first time, and she's like, oh, you baby child. And he seemed to be trying to shut the door on her and push her out of the warmth, or out of the warm, lamplit, low-beamed room beyond him, into the night again. Don't you have the impudence to shut this door on me, my boy? I wasn't
telling him.
Yeah, she's like, you're not gonna keep me out of this house that I have no right to be in. How dare? I wasn't going to, but you're keeping the door open, he protested. What do you want? So she's like looking around the room, and I thought it was actually really interesting. So the shop is described in like pretty great detail. Like they talk about the workbenches where, you know, she would make the wax fruits and the silk flowers, and like it's very detailed.
Yeah.
Everything else is not. And then the castle, the room that she sees first, is very, very descriptive.
Yeah.
Like, it goes on. And so Sophie sees that there's a fire inside. Ah, my fortune! So she goes and she sits in front of the fire. And, like, she's describing the colors of the fire. And, like, she described the room as being warm and lamplit and low-beamed. And, you know, let's see, there were a number of probably wizardly things hanging from the beams, strings of onions, bunches of herbs, and bundles of strange roots. There were also definitely wizardly things, like leather books, crooked bottles, and an old brown grinning human skull. So she really, like, goes into the descriptions of this room and everything in it. So I thought it was interesting how the author only really describes things that are going to mean a lot to Sophie. And that, you know, like, they didn't describe the school. They didn't really describe the bakery. They didn't really describe very much of the town. Sophie has no interest in those things. But the shop, Sophie had a lot of interest in the shop. Sophie is keenly interested in what's going on in the Wizard's Tower now. So, they give great descriptions of everything here. And so she goes in and she's like, "Tell Wizard Howl," she said to the boy, "that this castle's going to come apart round his ears if it travels much further. The castle's bespelled to hold together," the boy said, "but I'm afraid Howl's not here just at the moment." This was good news to Sophie. "When will he be back?" she said a little nervously. So she is a little nervous about meeting Howl.
So she's nervous about meeting Howl as much as she's nervous about Howl kicking her out.
Yeah.
She knows she's not supposed to be here, and she doesn't know, like, they talk about it a little bit later. She's like, I don't know what excuse I'm going to have to stay here, but I'm doing it anyway, and she's just, like, wanting to hide out here for the night. She's like, I just need a place to stay. And she's making up an excuse that she needs to talk to Howl for it, like...
Well, and so after that, so probably not till tomorrow now, the boy said. "What do you want? Can I help you instead? I'm Howl's apprentice, Michael." This was better news than ever. "I'm afraid only the wizard could possibly help me," Sophie said quickly and firmly. And it was probably true, too. "I'll wait if you don't mind." It was clear Michael did mind. He hovered over her a little helplessly, to make it plain to him that she had no intention of being turned out by a mere boy apprentice. Sophie closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. "Tell him the name's Sophie," she murmured. "Old Sophie," she added. I don't think they need that. Like, specify. Old Sophie. So...
Well, I mean, she is the old Sophie now. She's not young Sophie. So it's kind of like showing that, you know, she's different. She's not the same Sophie she was. She's not the Sophie that she was. She's old Sophie now. It justifies her, like, character change kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the fact that I think she was using it kind of as an excuse, but also, like, to stay the night, but also, I think she really is hoping that Howl can, like, help figure out kind of what's going on with her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she showed, like, a little bit of curiosity for, like, if Howl could help her, but when it came down to it, like, a lot of what she was saying, she just wanted a night to stay there, and... She's like, since he's a wizard, maybe he can do that kind of stuff, but then she can't even talk about it to him still either.
Yeah, she can't say she's under a spell.
Yeah.
This part's funny. "Since Howl was such a wicked man, it probably served him right to be imposed upon." She's like, "You don't have a good reputation, so you deserve me, you know, squatting in your house." So it goes in, she kind of describes more, and in this kitchen or workshop was beautiful. This kitchen or workshop was beautifully cozy and very peaceful. So you would expect almost like a dungeon-esque quality to Howl's castle, but she says it's beautiful and it's warm and it's cozy and it's inviting, and she really likes it there, which is kind of funny because she's like, the beginning of the book really builds up the whole, like, oh, Howl, Soul Eater, he's so scary. And she's like, this is such a cozy room. And, like, the chair that she's in.
Aside from the skull that creeps sitting behind her.
Well,
she was, like, freaked out by that.
Well, it's, okay, anybody would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and I think she points out, like, aside from that skull, like, everything, she really likes it. And then it talks a little while she's sleeping. So, like, Michael accidentally knocks over her walking stick, and he puts it back. And so so this is where we get the talking fireplace when he goes to pick up the stick. So, let's see. She did not stir when Michael knocked her stick down with a clatter, reaching over her for a log to put on the fire, or when Michael, looking down into Sophie's open mouth, remarked to the fireplace, "She's got all her teeth. She's not the Witch of the Waste, is she?" "I would not have let her come in if she was," the fireplace retorted. So, talking fireplace, magic.
Yep.
Michael shrugged and picked Sophie's stick politely up again. It points out multiple times Michael politely did this. Politely. He is a very polite young man. He's a little miffed that she, like, barged her way in, probably because he's like,
I think anybody would be.
My boss is not gonna be happy about this. But, like, he treats her kindly, even though she is imposing on them. Let's see. And right after that, then he put a log on the fire with equal politeness and went away to bed somewhere overhead. So, he's polite. He's polite to Sophie. He's polite to the fireplace. So, Sophie wakes up, and let's see. So, she puts a basket, or she goes to the basket of logs, and she puts one into the fire. And she describes the fire. She stretched out a creaking arm and heaved a log onto the fire, which sent a spray of green and blue sparks flying up the chimney. She heaved down a second log and sat back, not without a nervous look or so behind her. Where blue-purple lights from the fire was dancing over the polished brown bones of the skull. So yeah, she's like, the skull. So the fire is obviously different. It's blue-green flames. So she notices this, the colors, must be the salt in that wood, Sophie murmured. She settled herself more comfortably, putting her knobby feet on the fender and her head into the corner of the chair, where she could stare into the colored flames and begin dreamily considering what she ought to do in the morning. But she was sidetracked a little by imagining a face in the flames. So she starts to describe, like, she sees a face in the flames. She's like, oh yeah, like, there's your hair, and there's your eyes, and there's your mouth. And she's saying this out loud, like, she's describing it. Let's see. On the other hand, Sophie continued, looking into the orange flames. If the spell was off, I'd have my heart eaten before I could turn around. Don't you want your heart eaten? Asked the fire. It was definitely the fire that spoke. Sophie saw its purple mouth move as the words came. Its voice was nearly as crackled as her own, full of the spitting and whining of burning wood. Naturally I don't, Sophie answered. What are you? So immediately, instead of being like, the fire talk, she's like, hey, what's up? What are you? Like, no concern, no nothing. Just like, talking fire.
She is in, like, a wizard's castle, right? And she doesn't care anymore because she's old. So she's just like, whatever.
Okay, young Sophie would have, like, flipped out of her chair and be like, oh my gosh, a talking flame! And, like, she's like...
Yeah, she's old Sophie now.
She's old Sophie, so old Sophie doesn't care.
Yeah, old Sophie's just like, cool. Fire. Neat.
Yeah, she's like, that's cool. So, a fire demon answered the purple mouth. There was more wine than spit to its voice as it said, I'm bound to this hearth by contract. I can't move from this spot. So Sophie didn't know she was talking to a sentient being when she said that, when she was talking about the spell. So now this fire demon, who is bound to this hearth, knows that she is under a spell. And it says, what are you? It asked. I can see you're under a spell. So, also, it can sense the magic in Sophie. It's like, yeah, something's funky with you. This roused Sophie from her dreamlike state. You see? She exclaimed. Can you take the spell off? So, immediately, instead of, like, hemming and hawing and like, well, like, maybe, she's just like, can you take it off? Which is funny, because she's embraced the life of an old woman, but she immediately leaps at the chance, or, like, wondering if it can take the spell off.
Well, I think, like, her entire, like, personality, she's very accepting of whatever's happening, but in reality, I don't think that she wants to be old, you know what I mean? Like, she's accepted this as her fate because she's, like, settled herself on being this person. She's just like, this is just what I get for being, the eldest of 3 daughters. This is what I deserve in life. But in reality, she doesn't want to be old, so of course she's going to want to take the opportunity and get back her youth and like that kind of stuff.
I think in this juncture specifically, I don't think she knows what she wants in life, because she's grown up her whole life going, I'm the eldest of 3, I can't do anything important. You see her every now and then bring up like a little like, well, maybe I could go do this. No, you're the oldest of 3. She constantly beats herself down with this knowledge.
Yeah.
And she denies what she wants, and now she's an old lady and she can do whatever she wants. She has no F's to give.
Yeah.
But now that she's presented with possibly being able to break this curse, now she's just like, oh, hello. But I still don't think she's really sure of, like, I think in this moment, if Sophie, like, if the fire demon was just like, yeah, I could break your spell right now, and if he broke it, she'd probably go back to her old ways, and she'd be terrified, and she'd be like, take me back to market shipping, like, take me back, I have to get back to the hat shop. I think that Sophie's at her crossroads right now, of, like, she needs to have a journey, she needs to, like, figure some stuff out. But the fire says that it's a strong spell, not smell. It feels like one of the Witch of the Wastes to me. So he would recognize the types of magic and like who the practitioner was. And so Sophie agrees. Yeah, it was. But it seems more than that, crackled the demon. I detect 2 layers, and of course you won't be able to tell anyone about it unless they already know. So not only does Sophie have the Witch of the Wastes spell put on her, there's other magic at work in Sophie.
Leaning towards Sophie having some kind of magic.
Yes, there's something going on that Sophie doesn't even know about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he says that he has to study it, and she asks how long it will take, and he's like, take a while. And of course, he's a demon, he bargain. How about making a bargain with me? I'll break your spell if you agree to break this contract I'm under. So he's under a contract, she's under a spell. He's like, I help you, you help me?
And he's in a contract with Howl, and Howl, like, bound him to this contract with the same terms of, like, you can't mention the contract, like, kind of stuff that Sophie's under with her. She can't talk about being under the spell. She can't tell people it.
I think it's really funny that they did that, because, like, he can say, like, yeah, I'm under a contract, but he can give no details, except for, like, yeah, it's with Wizard Howl. But he's just like, she's like, okay, so how do I do it? How do I break it? He goes, I can't tell you. which is really funny because I'm not going to spoil it, even though spoiler alert, but they have an odd sense of camaraderie. I think she really feels a kindred spirit in this fire demon because
Pun intended, I hope.
oh yeah. So they're both under spells. They can't talk about it. And so they have no idea how to help the other person, really. But they enter into this agreement, and it's really, and he, of course, he doesn't tell her that he can't tell her anything until after they've agreed to it.
Yeah, of course.
And
I
it's
just want to say, I hated how quickly she agreed to it. She's just like, yeah, sure. I'll break you out of this. Like, nothing.
No fine print.
Nothing at all. And it's like, and she doesn't even know if he can help her.
Oh yeah.
Like, he even said that. He's like, well, I still have to figure out what this actual spell is, and it's going to take a while for me to even figure that out. So I might not even be able to do anything, but, you know, you can enter this bargain to break mine, and then I'll break yours. And it's just like, but you don't even know what it is.
So yeah,
He literally said that.
He's a fire demon, and he is crafty. So he's like, so they.
I don't know if it's crafty. He was pretty straightforward, and she just agreed. Like, I didn't like her to just immediately agree.
Well, like I said, he didn't. So he agree, and he's actually the most eager. Done, cried the demon, his long face leaping gleefully up the chimney. I'll break your spell the very instant you break my contract. So he's not going to help her unless she helps him. Tell me how I can break your contract, Sophie said. The orange eyes glinted at her and looked away. I can't. Part of the contract is that neither the wizard nor I can say what the maiden clause is. Sophie saw that she had been tricked. She opened her mouth to tell the demon that it could sit in the fireplace until doomsday in that case. The demon realized she was going to. Don't be hasty, it crackled. You can find out what it is if you watch and listen carefully. So that's the thing. Just like how, like, Sophie can't really say about her spell. If, like, she was not saying anything to anyone, but the fire demon could tell, and she actually straight up said, if this spell was gone. So it's just really funny that, like, he waited. He's like, I won't help you until you help me. But her task is going to be very difficult. But he tells her, if you watch and listen, it will be made very clear. And Sophie's just like, I've been bamboozled. And so he says it'll take about a month to study the spell. But what possible excuse can I give for doing that, for staying for a month? We'll think of that one. Howl's pretty useless at most things, in fact, the demon said, venomously hissing. He's too wrapped up in himself to see beyond his nose half the time. We can deceive him, as long as you'll agree to stay. So, they're both pulling a fast one on Howl, but he's like, he's so stuck up, he's not even gonna notice. They're painting Howl as less of this, like, monster and more of this, like, self-absorbed young man. And it's kind of funny that now, you know, the demon and Sophie are in, you know, cahoots with each other. Let's see. Let's see.
Just for the end, they just had said, like, or they were just going to try to figure out how to fool him. I know that was endgame towards the end of that chapter.
Yeah, she settled herself comfortably in the chair while the demon thought. It thought aloud, in a little crackling, flickering murmurs, which reminded Sophie rather of the way she had talked to her stick when she walked here, and it blazed while it thought, with such a glad and powerful roaring that she dozed again. She thought the demon did make a few suggestions. She remembered shaking her head to the notion that she should pretend to be Howl's long-lost great aunt, and to one or two other ones even more far-fetched, but she did not remember very clearly. The demon at length fell to singing a gentle, flickering little song. It was not in any language Sophie knew, or she thought not, until she distinctly heard the word saucepan in it several times, and it was very sleepy sounding. Sophie fell into a deep sleep with a slight suspicion that she was being bewitched now, as well as beguiled. But it did not bother her particularly. She would be free of the spell soon. So she really has, like, no bothers, no cares. She's just like, yeah. She's like, I'm just gonna sleep. Like, fire demons say what? She say it's fine.
I like that even. She literally doesn't care, and she's just like, okay, if you want me to help you break this, you're gonna have to figure out the excuse. I'm gonna take a nap. Like,
yeah,
I love that.
she's not going to let the fire demon make her do everything, but she's like, yeah, no, you're gonna help. And she just goes back to sleep. Like, so unbothered. She's like, yeah, we'll have an excuse in the morning. You know, Howl's gonna come. It'll be fine.
They'll make something up on the spot, I'm sure.
But, so, okay. What are your general thoughts after the first 3 chapters?
General thoughts? I mean, as far as Sophie, I really like her character. I like how they're developing her character, and I like the shift whenever she became old with that a lot. I still stand by what I'm saying with, like, this story, though, like, it's third person. It's very much told from Sophie's perspective, and it's, like, kind of like how you were pointing out before with what is important to Sophie is being described, or, like, stuff that catches her interest is being described. It still makes me feel like a lot of the stuff that is set in stone or set in, like, society that she believes in is less that this is actually what's happening in the city and more of just what's happening for Sophie. And, like, that's kind of the way that I'm seeing the book is framing things, to be like, it's all from Sophie's perspective, all from her beliefs, all the things that catches her interest. As opposed to it being, like, a full, like, third person, you know what I mean?
It's third person limited, not third person omniscient. It's a third.
Well, yes, but, like, it's third person limited in a different sense, because, like, I've had some other books that I've read that are third person limited, but it still has stuff set in stone. This is very much like the author is framing it from her perspective, but trying to make it seem like it's not entirely. I don't know how to explain this well. It just feels like it's all coming from her, like, from her point of view. Very much so. I don't know how else to explain that.
I don't know. I think I just accept that is how the book is, because when you're...
I just find it very unique. I find it very creative, because usually whenever you read, like, books from third person, you see, like, these things. A lot of, like, the stuff, even, like, the first sentence with it, for the land where things is sevenlings, like, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the most fortunate to be born, the eldest of 3. Usually you would take that at kind of, like, face value of, like, oh, this is a law of the land. This is just what it is. As opposed to, this is Sophie's belief. You know what I mean? That this is the law of the land. This is all from Sophie's side of things. That's hard to explain exactly what I'm trying to say, but yeah.
See, and I think we have 2 different schools of thought here, because I think that it's sort of like an unwritten thing in their, like, because obviously, like, with the magic and everything, there's, like, certain things that are certain things have more importance. It's like in high fantasy being the 7th son of a 7th son. Like, there are kind of, like, things about this. So,
yeah, and see, I thought that at first as well. I thought, like, okay, yeah, this is definitely, like, just a thing for this kind of land, this kind of society. That's just how it is. But the more that I read, and the more of, like, Sophie's perspective and how she changed, and then, like, reading with the sisters and how they had different, like, ideas, changing how things were done, and just, like, how the mother was treating and taking advantage of Sophie, it made me start to think more of, this is all just from Sophie's belief system as opposed to actual societal system, which will just lead to, like, character growth for Sophie later, I think. But
I think it's going to be interesting to see how we carry our different thoughts into
throughout like all of it. Yeah.
Because I've read the book before. I only read it once, and it was a little while ago, but I think now that I'm actually like analyzing the book instead of just reading it, I wonder how like my thoughts are going to change on it. Yeah. But I definitely think of Sophie I think of her as being less helpless. Like, I think a lot of it is her own doing. And I, like, even if she has this belief, she still just goes with it. Instead of challenging that belief of, like, oh, I'm the first of 3 daughters, like, instead of challenging anything, she so helplessly just goes along with it. And I think young Sophie uses her belief. I think she beats herself down with it more than anything. I don't think it was an enforced thought by her, like, stepmom or anything like that. But even Sophie goes as far as to, like, she believes this so much that she kind of directs her sisters to what she thinks they should do in their lives. And then she comes to find out, like, oh, that's completely wrong. Like, they didn't even want that. Yeah. So I think that it'll be interesting seeing how Sophie goes forward now that she's an old lady, and now that she completely gave up, and she's still the first daughter. She's still the eldest daughter. That never changed. But now that she's old, she's giving herself a free pass to go forward, to do what she wants, act how she wants, when nothing changed except the fact that she looks old. So I think
I don't know if it's just that she looks old, though, because she was explaining how, like, her walking had changed and stuff, right? And, like, her energy had changed and stuff. And I think it had mentioned as well, like, the demon had said how she lost so many years. So I don't know if it's just that she looks old.
Well,
she's actually, like, become old.
Like, physically she is, but mentally she's not. Like, the only thing that changed is that she is physically, like, a 90-year-old now. Yeah. And I think that a lot of, like, she allowed her like, whole frame of reference to switch so easily. And I think she has way more control over her thoughts, her feelings, her future than she really wants to give herself credit for. And I think she's afraid to do anything because she's afraid to fail. Yeah. But if she did fail or anything, like, she's like, I might as well not try because I'm going to fail. And it's kind of like it's a failsafe for her. Then it's not her fault. It's the fact that she's the oldest of 3. Yeah. So now
she does use that as a failsafe a lot.
Yeah. So now she's on this whole journey to, break her curse and everything and whatnot, and she's going about it a little nonchalantly, a little carelessly. I feel like young Sophie would have been like, okay, I need this in writing, I need to see the fine print, I need to know everything that's going on. Old Sophie's like, deal. Like...
Yeah, old Sophie don't care.
Old Sophie is so reckless and careless, but I think it's a lot of what she's built up over her lifetime of caring too much, and now she's just like, she's that crazy old lady.
She is.
And it'll just be really interesting to see how Sophie, and also it's building up to her meeting the wizard Howl for the first time, quote unquote. So it's going to be really interesting to see how she actually responds to him.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see. I'm curious to see what he's going to do, and also what was the other guy's name?
Michael.
That's in the Michael. Yeah, I'm curious to see what he's gonna say to Howl.
Did they?
Like, yeah, this old lady just kind of walked in here.
Did they actually say the fire demon's name?
I don't think so. Not yet.
I don't think it's going to be like a spoiler, but.
I don't think they've said it yet. So that would.
Oh no. Okay, so
if it's a thing, so.
Michael says it in the next chapter.
Okay.
I love the fire demon. He's sassy. He's funny. He grumbles. He and Sophie are like, they already set up their relationship so perfectly.
Yeah.
I think you're going to love that. But I think...
If the fire demon is as sassy as Sophie is, I'm gonna love it.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
literally, as soon as Sophie showed character, and like, I still loved the fact that like, lose your temper, lose a customer, and she just was sassy to that customer, being like, "Well, yeah, you look horrible in that hat. Of course, it didn't work for you." I loved it. I love Sophie.
Like I said, Sophie has way more brass than she wants to admit.
Yeah.
And it definitely shows in Old Lady Sophie. So
I think it really came down to that, like, that pressure and whatnot, and that social anxiety that she had, and that's just kind of gone now that she's like old.
like I said, she had so much anxiety and whatnot when she was, young Sophie, and I think that now that it's all about her feelings about it. Because most young girls would freak out about being old, and they'd be like, I need to get this changed, like, right now, like, I'm freaking out. And Sophie's just like, yeah, this, I look like I feel. Like, she's so ready to just embrace her old ladiness. And I'm like, so part of me wonders if, like, Sophie was just waiting for something to happen to, like... Young Sophie seems like the person that things happen to, not that, like, she goes and makes things happen. Like, she will be content to just plot down the river and whatnot, and she will not deviate from the course unless something else acts upon her. So now that the Witch of the Waste has cursed her, now she's forced to do something different, which brings off this whole new personality, and then you get old Sophie, and then she's just like, yeah, like... I'm gonna make a deal with the fire demon. I'm gonna break into Howl's castle. I'm gonna be all, like, entitled and whatnot. So it'll be really fun to see, like, what other changes happen and get to meet the wizard Howl.
I'm curious what he's gonna be like, because so many, like, he's been described so many different ways, right?
Right, and...
So many different... So it's just all this build up to be like, what is he actually going to be like?
It'll be interesting, but I think...
I'm looking forward to it.
I think we're good. So our next one is going to be March 1st, correct? Which is Saturday?
Yes, March 1st.
Okay,
Saturday.
And then we will be going over chapters 4 through 6.
Is it... Wait. 4, 5... Would it be 7?
No, because we've...
Chapter 4, Chapter 5. We're doing a chapter a week, right? So that's 4 chapters?
Oh, we started late, so that's why we only did 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so... chapters 4 through 7. I'm glad we specified that, because I wouldn't have read through there.
Yeah. I'm like, all I know is I read a chapter a week. That's what I've been trying to do, so...
Although, let's see. Okay, so we're here. That'll be interesting, because the first is going to fall on Saturday, and I did my reading on Saturday, so... Oh, no, I did it Friday night. Never mind. We'll figure it out. But,
That's okay, I did my reading, or the last chapter reading on Saturday, because I was sick all week, so...
Okay, so I think that is it.
Yeah.
We will see you all next time for more analysis on Howl's Moving Castle.
And thank you to everybody who showed up as well and said hello. Sorry we didn't super talk to the chat, but of course, if you guys like have questions or bring up stuff, we are reading chat as we're going through, and we're happy to answer like questions about it or anything like that. If you guys also want more details about the book or about the chapters or updates for it, we both have in our Discords. I have a literature section. I don't know where yours is at in your Discord.
Mine is... So it's in general chats. It's Untitled Bookcast right now, but I actually need to put a name on it.
Yeah, mine is just in the literature section, the reading stuff section. So we'll update, and I'll put like the next day that we're going to be doing this in there as well, with the next chapters and everything.
Yep.
And if you guys have book recommendations for us too, for future ones, even though we're taking it chapter a week, so it'll be a while.
It'll be a hot minute.
Yeah. But thank you to everybody who's watching. We appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
And
I guess we'll see you next time.
Yep, with that, we are signing off.
Yep.
Bye!
Bye-bye.